Well, good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thanks for joining me this morning. Got a good cup of coffee, and I'm turning to Matthew chapter 24. I want you to come and join me. Now, if you haven't discovered just how good Iron Brew coffee is, made right here in Blythewood, South Carolina, near us, you go check it out at ironbrewcoffee.com or come visit one of the many places around South Carolina that sell it, and you'll be delighted that you have discovered these wonderful folks and all the many flavors that they have as well. Hey, that's enough. Don't worry. This is not even a paid promotion. It's something I'm doing because I want to, because I really enjoy them. And this is a family owned company, somebody you'd really like to support. So in Matthew chapter 24, let's get to something else we want to really focus on today. We introduced the Olivet Discourse yesterday. In it, Jesus has given us some stern warnings in the beginning. He's already told his disciples about the temple that's going to be destroyed, which it was some 40 years or so after he's uttering these words. And then all of a sudden, he begins to warn them about the things in response to their questions, by the way, warn them about the things that are going to be occurring before he returns. This entire teaching series is so rich with truth. I don't want you to miss not one episode of it. If you happen to be gone and can't see it, don't worry. They're going to be in my playlist, for example, on YouTube under Olivet Discourse, or you can just go back and pick each day from Rumble or some other source and make sure you watch each one of them. Well, as we get into verse 4, Jesus has already told us to watch out that no one deceives you. He's warned us about deception. Verse 5, he talks about how that's going to occur. He says, "For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and they will deceive many." Now, when we think of this kind of deception, we're not just talking about people who would come and say, "Hey, I'm Jesus," and trying to put on that I'm Jesus Christ. There have been enough of those characters. There are a few running around the world today. But we're talking about those who would say, what is a Messiah? A deliverer, the person that you're supposed to follow. This could be from not just a religious realm, a political realm. I'm the Messiah. I'm the one you need to pay attention to. Throw away, destroy all these other systems and these other leaders you've been following. Come follow me. I'll show you the way to go in this world. And that kind of messiahship, where some people just think they are God's gift to humanity and come follow me, are what we are loaded down with today. Folks, leading people off into some of the strangest beliefs and practices, all inspired by the devil himself and leading people away from Christ. So he says, watch out, they will deceive many. But look at the next verse. He says, you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed, because these things much must take place, but the end is not yet. And certainly since Jesus came the first time, we've had nothing in this world except a lack of peace. That's right. One day the Prince of Peace will reign, but in the meantime, what do we get? Wars and rumors of wars. It seems like that's been the pattern through history. But here in the end times, we seem to be uh, escalating that pattern even more when terrorism enters the picture. And just like events that have taken place the last couple of days in the Middle East, this seems to really focus. Remember, the eyes of Bible prophecy are Jerusalem. And we've seen this focus again and again as once again armies are trying to move to the north of Israel, to move in from the nation we call Iran, that's biblical Persia. The forces of Israel, the IDF, attacks them to try to get this army off their border. Then, of course, they're responded to by, this time of all things, Hezbollah out of Lebanon firing rockets into Israel. Israel responds with an artillery barrage into Lebanon. I mean, back and forth, wars and rumors of wars that will continue. But Jesus says, hey, hang on, the end is not yet. And in verse 7, he says something that's quite interesting as we apply it to our day. He says, for nation will rise up against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now, hold on for just a second. Isn't that just repetitious? Nation, kingdom, country. Wow, what's the difference? Actually, there's a big difference here. The word translated into English nation is the Greek word ethnos, from which we get the English word ethnic, or an ethnic group, ethnicity. And so here's Jesus telling us that And as many nations in those days were built around one particular group of people that might even be called a tribe or a particular race. He's saying ethnic group will rise up against ethnic group and kingdom against kingdom, the vast empires and countries. We see today something that is most unusual, where there was a time when nations who perhaps had different ethnic makeups could get along with each other and maybe have times of peace. What we have now is almost civil war occurring not just in countries but all the way down to neighborhoods with rival gangs who seem to be built around different ethnic identities. Isn't that scary? And we're being told by some folks that really want to be put in power, some have made it to power, that this is a real thing we should continue to build on. We should continue to make people feel angry at each other because of one person's race or how much pigment is in your skin or not. Friends, this is only going to lead us down a path towards more hatred and division. But Jesus said, this is going to happen in the end. These characters are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to try to get you to hate your neighbor because he is of a different background or race, or he came here from a different country. The love of God, which is supposed to be exhibited to all of humanity, is often put on the back burner as we're told to make differences between different groups of people so that you can actually focus on being the victim here. And you can focus on how you've somehow been wronged by one of these other groups. So you should be able to take it out on them and get your vengeance. Come on, people. Where are we going with this? Well, we're going towards the end, and it may be coming faster than you and I think, as nation rises against nation and then kingdom against kingdom. And then he says there are going to be famines and earthquakes in various places. Now, yes, we've seen famines and problems with food, and we have problems with that circulating the globe today as we bounce around with water shortages, heat waves, floods, just things that just tend to knock out that systematic farming that we have to do to be able to feed the world. And so, this is nothing new. It's going to keep happening. But I want to show you something that Luke gives us that Matthew doesn't. One more word that's added to this. You see in Luke chapter 21, in this version of the Olivet Discourse, it says, nation will be raised up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be violent earthquakes and famines and plagues in various places. Yes, plagues, pestilences, some versions say. So it talks about diseases, unusual diseases that rise up in the end times. You'll notice we've had quite a few of those over the last generation, diseases that were previously known to be only in the animal kingdom, but somehow keep jumping into humanity. And from the start of the AIDS epidemic on into things like Ebola and E. coli and other things, it seems like every stage gets worse and worse. We get new strains of flu viruses that seem to jump from animals or birds into humans. And then we come up with COVID-19 of all things. Now, listen, I'm not here to argue whether it was engineered in a Wuhan lab or if it came from an animal. I really think the former is more likely, by the way. But, whatever is taking place, these are end time plagues. It seems like we can't cure one, get a vaccine for one before turning around and finding there's a new variant or a new plague coming. So Jesus said these are all things that are going to happen in the last days. And he puts it in perspective in verse 8 by saying all these events are the beginning of labor pains. The beginning of labor pains. I want to close with this. You ladies that have had a child or multiple children know that you don't normally just go into labor, bang, and the baby's coming. You usually go through a period of time, times when you have the little minor contractions and then bigger contractions. And you may have false labor. You may even run to the hospital and think you're going to have a baby, only to be told, go home, it was just false labor. And that's the kind of way that Jesus is saying, look at these things as they're going to be happening in the end. You'll see these events as they start mounting up, but it's not time for the baby to be born yet. These are the beginnings of labor pains. For those of you who've been through it, or if you're a husband like myself, you've been through it with your wife, you know that those lead up to a time when eventually, hey, while the water breaks or the pains really start coming, and now you know this show is ready to hit the road. I mean, we're going to have a baby, and then it comes more rapidly. So expect these things not to fall away and calm down, but instead watch as they ramp up as we get toward that time closer to the coming of Christ. We're going to see more and more of these events. And you perhaps have already seen, if you've lived as long as I have, or some of your senior adult friends have lived, we've seen time just kind of crawl around, even with major events in the world, with some of these signs and signals having little hints in the past. But now it seems like as we entered the 21st century, they started coming with rapidity. And now they seem to be coming more often than we know what to do with. It's almost as if you wake up in the morning and you turn on your news feed, or you watch don't watch the TV. Most major news networks, at least, they're not worth watching. But as you pick up on what's going on in the world, you say, "Wow, this happened overnight." That's because as labor pains will intensify, so will these kind of events intensify up until the second coming of the Lord. So, friends, be ready, be watching. We're in the beginning of the labor pains. We've seen these events begin to come to happen, and more of them that we're going to read about here soon are happening around us every day. What do? You hang on to your faith. You love your brothers and sisters in Christ and love the lost to Jesus. You tell people the good news of the gospel because, my friends, Jesus is coming. Let's don't take for granted that we just have forever to lead our friends and family to Christ. We need to do it right now while we can. I'll see you again right here tomorrow as we wake up in God's Word.